Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name's Sarah Lancaster. I'm the industry programmer for this year's festival. And thank you so much for coming along on time for our Tuesday morning panel. I know Tuesday morning is starting to hurt a little bit, but we're really excited to have this. It's our last in our Meet With session, and thank you again to the OMDC for their support of this series. We really wanted to have a session on music and music and cinema in this year's program, so we're absolutely thrilled to present this session with you and to you. I will now introduce you to our moderator. Kieran Roy is the General Manager of Arts and Craft. We're very thrilled to work with Kieran and his team, not only on this session, but also the Festival Music House, which started last night, kicks off tonight and again tomorrow. So I'll throw to you, Kieran, to introduce our panel and lead today's discussion.
Thank you. We have a great panel here. I think that covers the kind of range of who gets involved in getting music into film. To my immediate right is Jason Collett, who's an artist on the Arts and Crafts roster that I work very closely with. And Jay's one of our most licensed artists in terms of placing music in film and television. One of his songs is in Sarah Polley's film Take This Waltz, which played at the festival. To Jay's right is Jared Goodstad, who is the founder and CEO of Jingle Punks. Jared can talk a little bit more about what Jingle Punks does as we go across. Susan Kent, a music supervisor from LA, who's got a few films playing at TIFF, including a film called 10 Year, which played last night. And Michael Dow's the director of Goon, one of the key films at the festival. And I'm thrilled Michael's a part of this panel because all his films, including the two Fubar films, It's All Gone Pete Tong, have been very music-centric in the way that they present film and music together. So thank you for joining us. I think, Jared, as we go through and talk about more specifically about how you guys, and Susan, we can talk specifically about how you both as supervisors and how you kind of differ in the way you approach projects. But maybe to start off, we'll start with Michael, and you can talk to us a little bit about how you approach a project and when you start thinking about music, going to picture, and how you approach that.
Sure. I mean, it's obviously project dependent. With my films, they've tended to be musically sort of embedded in a genre. So with the Fubar films, obviously it's rock and roll, and with Pete Tong, it was God, I can't even say it, dance music, and with Goon most recently, Goon was a bit more of a mix where there was sort of these hockey anthems, but there's also this opera. So the first step is in terms of your first question, which is how quickly do I start thinking about music? Not a ton when I'm shooting, unless there's something that calls for sync, or something specific in my head that I think would work, or we desperately need to pretty clear. But with Fubar 2, we had Every Rose Has Its Thorn, which we knew was going to be the song which we wrote in, and then we had actors lip syncing to, so we pre-cleared that. But that's pretty rare. For the most part, it's really when I get into the edit suite, I've got enough to worry about in terms of shooting. The music I know I can kind of figure out later, and usually goes to the back of my brain until I get to the edit suite, and then it becomes pretty immersive. And depending on what I'm doing, I'll just sort of try to immerse myself in that genre. So with rock and roll, we'll just start listening right away to a ton of music. And fortunately, with the Fubar movies, that's sort of more my music I listen to at home, so it's easier for me. But with Take Me Home Tonight and with It's All Gone Pete Tong, that's a thing of like going back to 80s tracks and just literally just finding all the music I can find and just going through it and listening to it. And in terms of finding the songs, there is really no key recipe except for something that has an emotional content to it. In terms of finding a licensed track, something that kind of moves you in a way that works and has, usually there's a two or three tier system where you listen to it at first and you're like, oh, this could remotely work. It makes the first sort of playoff cut, and then normally I have like I have a version on my laptop where I can just do a bit of rough music editing, and then I'll usually either put it up roughly against a QuickTime movie where I hit play on iTunes and see if it roughly would work, and then I proceed to cut it in. But there really is no method except just try and fail, and just try and fail a lot.
How much of that do you control versus entrust in an editor or a music supervisor?
Well, with the editor that I work with, Red, she's got a great musical. He's like a music encyclopedia as well. But for the most part, I sort of take pretty tight reins of that and control what's coming in. I'll also have a music supervisor. So on Fubar, we'll have Paul Spence, who will always be sending me tracks to try stuff out. You know, it depends. On this last one, we didn't have a music supervisor till quite late, so I was really immersed into doing it myself. It's just try and fail, really.
And with Goon, is this the first time you've gone more into the score foray versus licensed?
Yeah, I've always been a guy who loves scores, who just puts in music and uses it as score. And this time we used a composer, and it was the second movie that I've used a full composer on. And it's good. I mean, it takes a bit of pressure on it. Also, I think, kind of melds the film together a little bit more, and it's something I want to do more as a filmmaker. But with Goon, it was we had this opera going through it, and we had a real sort of battle in terms of finding the right balance with the opera, where it works, but if you sort of use it one too many times, it kind of puts a massive break emotionally on the film or tonally on the film. So,
especially in a hockey film.
But that one was interesting. Yeah, that one was interesting because it was written into the script. I mean, Puccini was written in, and it always worked, and it never left. Yeah.
By the way, I should have mentioned earlier, if at any point during the panel, if people have questions that are kind of topical, just raise your hand. We'd rather tackle them as we go than wait till the end. So.
And then feel free to move up if you guys want to move up. Yeah, you guys are so far away.
and inevitably, I always have like 20 tracks that I keep in my back of my head that I'm always trying to get into the film. Always.
The nugget tracks.
The nugget tracks. They're always there, and I'm always like, Blue Cheer, God, just a little bit, which got into Fubar 2, was a track that I'm always putting in. Hot for Teacher is a track that I'm always putting in. And I've replaced twice, once with Girls' School and second with Motley Crue. And I can never clear it. But that's sort of the process. There's a hit list and just lots of failing.
The Motley Crue from Take Me Home Tonight, that was like the most amazing scene.
I know, but it's a year after 1988.
It's okay.
It didn't get released until 1989.
Well, before we get to the kind of middle of the panel here, which is our music supervisors, I thought it might be interesting to hear from Jay, who, as an artist, probably over the years, when you first started making music, you never really thought about how it may end up being used besides you performing it. That's probably changed over the last few years, I would assume.
Well, yeah, yes. It's changed. I mean, mostly for people like me that licensing has become a bit of more than a bit of my bread and butter, as other sources of revenue have dwindled. So I've started to depend on it, and I think it's sort of crept into how I write a little bit. You know, I'm in the middle of starting to make a new record right now, which is very dark, somewhat political, and I'm waiting for my wife to fully realize that there's not enough palatable music to sell on the record. And I got a kid in university, so these things affect how I make decisions. But
you find, though, maybe in the past you had a song idea that it gets discarded because it doesn't fit with an album, and now you may hold on to it and keep it for the side and think this could have a second career, maybe not on my album, but
sure.
in a film.
I think that's a good point. Like, more and more, as I make records, there'll be 15 songs on the record, but there's as many as 5 or 6 that I will record and mix and master and have in the wings, in case they get picked up. But I mean, I don't write specifically for film, so I've just been very fortunate to have a good amount of my songs get picked up.
And do you make a point when we put a song, and whether it's a television program that maybe you don't normally watch, do you make a point of watching it and seeing how the scene turned out?
No. No. Most of the stuff that I license, I don't see. But I rely on you to to make sure that it's credible enough. No.
All right. Well, and for some background, when either requests come in to us, on behalf, I'm not only the person supposed to be representing Jay's interests in his music, but I'm also the one dealing with Season or Jared. So it's an interesting place to be, just to kind of see both sides.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a few films over the years, and in this festival, the Sarah Polley film, Take This Waltz. Well, it was a real pleasure working with her. I mean, I actually got to work with her a bit. She contacted me to just for some advice. She wanted to make the film very Toronto-centric, wanted a lot of Toronto artists. So it was really nice to sort of help curate a little bit with that. And it can be very enjoyable, sort of working with a filmmaker as a musician.
Well, Season and Jared, you guys are in the kind of unenviable position sometimes of trying to balance the needs and the vision of someone in Michael's position with as a buyer, so to speak, and then dealing with people like Jay, or artists, or people like myself who represent our copyright, and trying to balance those needs. So I thought maybe it might be interesting. Do we have filmmakers in the audience here? It might be interesting to kind of like go over how that process starts, maybe give some tips, and discuss how you guys go about managing those different interests.
Well, we probably, not to speak for you at all, but we probably represent two different spectrums of, the types of music being licensed in content. Jingle Punks is a company that has a lot of pre-cleared music, so we aggregate indie bands who, for one reason or another, during the collapse of the record industry that we saw, don't have easy access to publishing deals or record deals, and we aggregate that music into a database. The way that we disseminate that is through a platform that we built called the Jingle Player. So our play is very much a high volume play. If you watch a lot of reality TV in the States, 9 times out of 10, you're hearing tracks from our library. And then on the other side of that, within film, instead of being a star player, like the way that some of the music that she would select ends up in there, ours is more supporting roles, or we have two sides of the business, which one is the library stuff, and then also we work on scores as well with our in-house studio. But our we're less of a pop idea and a clearance idea, and more of a pre-cleared idea or a bespoke idea.
Which is, I think real budget-wise for films these days, it's the most amazing thing to have, like an all-in package library to go to. Which we talked with you. He actually used music from his company in Goon. So
yeah, I mean, I used it. No offense, in a
None taken.
I would literally I have 43 tracks of music or something to put into the film, and I would be like, oh God, I need a figure skating track in 5 minutes that I have clearances for. And it's an amazing resource, because like you said, it might not be the star player, but it's still good quality music with some personality. It's not just boxed music. There's an actual person who's composed it and taken some time, and all that stuff really shines through. You can kind of tell, you can kind of feel the lack of a personality or in any track, and it'll drag down the scene,
production
even if
music,
it's way back in the background.
Production music has a very big stigma attached to it, and when we got into our side of the business, I was an editor for many years. I worked on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, cutting shows like Chappelle's Show or MTV Cribs, and a lot of times you were given two choices. You were given really expensive pop stuff, and as it became harder and harder to clear that stuff, less and less of that was used, and more people were using things like Pump and Extreme and stuff like that. And you literally hear the same tracks in your show that you'll see it in like a Huggies commercial. Then it just is very deflating, especially when you're trying to make creative musical choices. And we really want to have a focus on aggregating production music, quote unquote, but with a little bit, like you said, with just a bit of personality involved in it. And
They even have little photographs of the composers.
yeah, so if you end up liking Steve Smith and his amazing funk jams, you can keep going back to him. We don't hide our sources, because when I had my music in other people's libraries, I had no clarity. And when we started the company, we have a big focus on just being artist friendly. I didn't like the idea of having my tracks in a library where I just didn't know, A, how many tracks were actually accepted, B, sort of an ongoing list of who's been listening to it and what they were listening to, so that it makes them part of our team, where they can, gear tracks, if they're just making stuff at home all day, towards the searches that, if they see MTV's downloading it a lot, or NBC, or, commercial clients, they can figure out which tracks of theirs are like actually working and make more of them.
And then it makes it able to afford music like Jay's or something, like if it's using the all-in library stuff that, helps you stretch your budget, which is the biggest thing in a film. Like the music budgets are the last thing people think about.
If it still survives.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's a very small number. It's always like a fiction number though too. I mean, I've worked on films. I did The Fighter last year, and our initial music budget was $50,000, which is ridiculous. At the end of the day, it ended up being a lot more than that, because we had Zeppelin and
How did you
the
get
Stones.
that number up?
David O. Russell. He pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. But we tested the movie, and I think they saw this movie's going to do great. It's huge, and Oscar contender and all those things. And it went up to like 600 and 700,000, and then at the end of the day, it was like $1 million.
Wow.
But to have Aerosmith, the Stones, Led Zeppelin, I actually got some really good deals.
Now, do you find that, because I'm always amazed, like I've literally just gotten out of the trenches of music clearance, where I've been spending the last 4 weeks when I'm not mixing it with the sound designers, listening to music and like, how much is this going to cost? How much is this going to cost? Have you found that the price of music has gone down? Like, do you find it's cheap? Because I've found to a certain degree, but I'm not doing it all the time.
It depends which label you're dealing with. Some labels I think are still, are still hard. But yeah, everyone's friendly these days. Everyone wants to get their music used, and they know that it is the one place where, like Jay was saying, that they're making money. So.
And I think from our perspective that we have seen some price deterioration. There are certain things, like if you have a scene with the Rolling Stones and the song is "Start Me Up" and there is absolutely no substitute for that song, then the price is the price, and the market will dictate that. But what we have seen, is that as the record business has shrunk, we've seen it in our business that everyone's touring now, because you can't make money. So now there's a glut in the clubs of bands touring. The same way, now that the clubs are full, the answer is get your song in a film, and maybe that'll pay the bills. And the supply has just increased so much now that it's driven the price down, because before you might have had 2 or 3 people who would say yes to that, and now you've got 20 or 30 who are pitching you proactively to get their music used.
But at the same time too, now a lot of bands own their own stuff, which I think also they're a lot more friendly with using it. Like the Stones, their publishing is through ABCO, but a lot of their, I can't remember which record it is until all the present stuff now, they own it, so they want it out there. They want to use it, and you'd be surprised, and who actually, I don't know, it's like with Zeppelin, I thought like, we're never going to get this, but we did, I actually just recently cleared Zeppelin for Entourage, which I can't even believe I got that
Which
for
track?
that. Going to California.
Nice.
Last song ever of the show ever, so I was so excited. But I don't know, I think people, and the Beatles now are licensed, I don't know. Like I feel like everyone is getting it out there now.
The big thing that like what we saw at the beginning when we were starting Jingle Punks is I wasn't, aside from being an editor, I was also an artist, and I realized that everyone with like the advent of like digital technology, things like GarageBand, Logic, you can A to B some like, bands that are on the Warped Tour versus kids making stuff in their garage, and find some amazing stuff out there. And I think that's what's really caused, that price deterioration, where for us, obviously we're not in the diamond business. We're more like a high volume thing. But what we're seeing is you basically, do a gut check when somebody comes to you and says, "Look, we have this budget. What can we get for this?" And for us, it's because you don't see a terrible amount of back-end royalties on film. Like in television, every time a piece of music plays, or if it's on the radio, ask at BMI or SOCAN, you'll end up seeing that money back to you in a different way. But film, just the way that it's collected domestically, you won't see that until it hits television, unless like some film is like a super blockbuster and it ends up on like TNT till the end of time.
You'll never see that movie.
Yeah, if we do like a
Doesn't matter.
$500 needle drop within the film, the $500 is the $500, and that's it. So the goal is to get like 30 of those, in a project. And for us, it's about when he's under the crunch of licensing stuff, his big focus is let's get those big songs. He doesn't want to be haggling with us over the price every single time he comes to us. So literally the interaction went like this. His producer's like, how much for a bunch of these tracks? And I was like, 1,000. And then he's like, 500. And then I'm like, okay.
That makes everyone want to come back to you, and that's again, that's
we're a weird company in a way because like not many, I guess, music publishing companies, directly, I guess, like horse trade with the CEO on the phone. And I can't believe how much of that interaction goes on. But we got to find someone to do that at some point. Carrie.
There was a question here.
Yeah. I need distance.
There was a question here I wanted to get to.
My name is Laurie Bernier. I have a script for a feature that is heavy with the music. And in fact, the music is a character in the film. So I definitely need pre-clearance. But they're big. They're, plasmatic songs and Patti Smith. A friend of mine in the music industry said the best thing for me to do would be contacting. They're all they're all heavy female rock icons. To contact them, this is going to be a small film. How would I do that? Like, where would I start?
It would be good to get someone on that would know who to contact. Someone like me. Like a supervisor or. Yeah. But I mean, I would always like is it on camera people are performing it, or is it just playing? Like montages or.
It's a little girl who finds a mixtape. This takes place in the early '80s, and they become like her mentors. So the songs are played over and over again. She actually speaks the lyrics, like mantras almost. Like they are her parent.
Right. I mean, I always go the publisher master route first before I'll go to the manager, just because. I mean, for what I do, it's like I deal with the same people, the same licensing people, and there's, however many of them that I go to. So it's whoever your biggest artist is, I would say to go to them first and try to get them on board. And then it's easier. It's kind of like your negotiating power of like, well, we got Patti Smith, so you do it, And then it's sort of kind of trying to figure out whatever rights you want to use. And that's the biggest thing with licensing, Obviously, all media is what you really want to get, so you can use it anywhere and everywhere forever. But, whether it's step deals or however you want to structure out the money. And then once you get, I think, the deal with the biggest artist, maybe going to her publisher or her label, because who knows, they, may have to go to her for sign-off. Some publishing deals don't, and it may be better if it is actually her. So I'm Patti Smith, for instance. But, and then going to her and, getting her on board, I think,
Sometimes you also... Is this okay? Sometimes you also, depending on how creative you want to be within your script, you're gonna maybe only want to clear one side of it, and maybe find bands that you really like that you want to promote to like recover the songs, even if it might be a stretch of the imagination. Obviously, a film like yours sounds very specific with a mixtape.
In the 80s, yeah.
But I know that you guys have done stuff like in the past, right, where you guys have jumped on and covered classics and stuff like that for.
Well, it happened in the Sarah Pauli film. Feist does a classic Leonard Cohen song, and Michael can speak to this because most of the first Fubar film was kind of modern interpretations of classic rock songs.
That's always good advice. I mean, we did that with Fubar too as well, where we found, what was it, REO Speedwagon, where we paid for the publishing, but then the band had another recording of it that was very similar to the famous masters. So we were able to save like $15,000 just by talking to them or whatever it was.
And reaching out to the publisher, you'd know that because they would say, the band actually has their own master they own. They'll actually give you a reduction price on the publishing if you use their re-record.
Yeah. But I would say look at what you have and then be realistic about what your budget is that you can raise, and maybe cull back a little bit. And then maybe pick your favorites, pick your babies throughout the runts, and then I know it's hard, but well, you're either going to do it now, or you're probably going to do it later. I mean, honestly, we can't all get our music, and it's kind of a tough thing, but I don't know. I mean, I can't speak specifically to your case because it sounds very music-centric, but it's, the whole writing the letter to the artist never hurts, I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think it can hurt at all. So writing passionate letters to Patti Smith is probably a good start, as well as contacting the publisher.
And Michael, you mentioned, you know, in Fubar 2, you started with a song that's, you know, actually in the scene where the actors are, like, so that maybe that's when you prioritize because it can't be replaced or you have to reshoot the scene.
Yeah, no, exactly. If you have something where people are referring to it and talking to it, and it's thematically very central to the story, obviously that should be your first one, and then you just you know, pick your babies and stick with them. And with Fubar, we had all this great music and we just kind of put it up and got a great band, the English Teeth, together. And I mean, that was 10 years ago or 8 years ago now, and we just redid it. And I'm such a bastard. What I did in Goon is I just relicensed the music that my production company owns from the other stuff. So there's actually a track from Fubar 1 and a track from Fubar 2 that gets pumped into the hockey arena, just because I was like, I like that music and I own it.
A lot of people do that nowadays. Almost every single like media rights company that you deal with nowadays, whether it's TV shows or production companies, they want to, when you do tracks for them, we just did this thing where we rebranded the History Channel in the US with a cover of Buddy Holly's Every Day. So all they had to do was figure out their publishing situation, but now they own the new master of Every Day. We created 6 of them over the course of a year, and they just keep using them over. And obviously we see no back end on that either, but the production fees on, you know, re-records are, you know, sometimes well worth it. But even if they're doing like, you know, you know, score and stuff like that, having those copyrights and owning them, you can monetize them in your own content over and over again. And, you know, depending on, you know, the structure that you set up with your, you know, composers or whatever types of music you're using within there, it never hurts to, you know, have copyrights. And if you know what to do with them, those things can, you know, pay themselves back.
Well, I thought maybe that's a good segue to talk about kind of some pointers on you know, being effective and proactive in licensing music. Maybe Season, you can start us at, like, you know, I don't know if everyone here is familiar with even, you know, the basics. You know, we keep talking about 2 copyrights when you clear music. You know, there's the master, which is going to be owned by a record label or an artist directly, and then there's the publishing, which is the actual song composition and may involve a music publisher. So, you know, identifying those two people, there's 2 entities, and going after. But then, you know, how much money, how much percentage of a budget is a good rule of thumb to set apart for music licensing?
I mean,
Whatever's
it's never budgeted right.
Never is.
It never is, you know. I think it depends on the film. You know, it's like your film. It's like, for instance, you've 10 songs, you know, so based on what those are, how much you're planning on making your movie for. I mean, licensing music is never like a set price. You know, it costs this to license Patti Smith. It's never that, you know. They take into account the use. Is someone singing it on camera? Is it over a big montage? Is it a 3-minute use? Is it a 15-second use? And you kind of use all those points to kind of try to negotiate price, you know. It's a $1 million film. It's a $50 million film, you know. This is the cast in it. There's no cast in it. You know, it's all these things. We always try to, I don't know, I try to use everything to, like, you know, get it down as much as I can, you know.
I guess to some extent the price is, you know, what can be afforded to be paid.
Yeah, and you kind of like map out the film, you know, like, okay, this is a big, you know, important montage. We need a big song here. Here's a background scene where we can put a Jingle Punks song, you know, like, that's sort of how you have to.
And nothing can be as.
See how I did that?
Don't undervalue hustle too. I mean, that's the thing. Is just the editor Reg, who I work with. He's a director in his own right, has a great musical taste, and his wife does his clearances for him, and she just harasses him and gets great music because she never quits, and she just keeps going and calling them and putting a face to the name and saying. I mean, he's not going after Stones music or anything like that. It's very sort of obscure 70s music, but just hustle never hurts at all.
And a lot of people too, like, especially if you're getting like cool stuff that maybe hasn't been out there, those people are so excited to get it placed, you know. And you'd be surprised. People are actually really cool and excited and want to help, you know.
Jay, when you get approached and you know, do you have a number in your head that you think that your music is worth, or do you want to know more about the film and actually kind of buy into what the movie's about or the production's about and consider that?
Well, if if I if I have a sense of the film and it's something I'm turned on by, I definitely want to be flexible and be associated with a good film. As far as numbers, well, you usually have a fairly good sense of numbers, so I leave that up to you. But it fluctuates wildly. I mean, 8 years ago, I was getting around 25,000 a pop for a feature film, and now, with the saturation of artists willing to sell for less, it can be in the hundreds of dollars. And I've given stuff away free too. If we, you can really appeal to an artist by being an artist. And we work with, we're used to doing stuff for free all the time. I have a good understanding of, I have a lot of friends in the industry, I have a good understanding of how much people really donate their time to a small budget film or a no budget film, So I think there's lots of artists that are sympathetic, but at the same time, you have to be very careful not to insult. And I've been insulted before. People have approached feeling like they've got the right, and they get indignant if they've appealed and say they have no money. And Kieran's very good at feeling out, well, what do you got? What's your film about? And if people don't respond in kind and with some sensitivity, they're not going to get very far.
There to the idea of the spectrum of things you get paid for versus what's cool. It's usually you're going to get paid really well for the things that aren't necessarily cool, but the projects that I fight for to be on, like I said, the two parts of the business, the licensing side and the composing, I will fight very hard to get on cool projects to compose on. And at that point, I usually, in all seriousness, don't handle the price interaction when we're doing scores, because that's just, goes to, the admin side of things, and they negotiate. But I say to my team, I was like, I want to be part of this thing. The Morgan Spurlock doc that I just composed on, I was like, I need to do this thing. I get it. I want to, be part of it. And, having that dialogue back and forth and being able to, get the vision of a director and be able to be part of something that's cool and is going to be seen, as opposed to working on season 3 of Real Housewives, of Atlanta, is sort of things that get me off more than,
I think that's how we all operate, for sure.
Yeah. I'm fighting right now to get on this ESPN doc about Todd Marinovich, the quarterback of the future from the 70s, who completely burnt out and destroyed his career. And I was like, I want this, because it's all Neil Young inspired music.
Yeah.
There's a question up here at the front.
This may be a bit of a digression, but in the 40s and the 50s, you had all these great Warner Brothers scores, Central European trained operetta composers like Eric Korngold, and in the early 50s and early 60s, these light jazz, Henry Mancini and so forth. And then I remember going to see, I'm that age, seeing Easy Rider, and that was a seminal moment, because then, that was the first time I remember rock music really being the center of a film, and that inaugurated a whole era of rock music. But now today, it seems to me, there's such the marketplace in Hollywood is kids, and there's such unlike my generation of the 60s, it's so fragmented, the musical taste, from rap to indie rock to so forth. And I was wondering if, do you feel that there's a problem in finding a score or a set of songs that will appeal to a large a number of younger people for a film, as opposed to 10 or 20 years ago, when you could put on a Hendrix or a Stones or something and that would grab them?
I'm a huge score nerd. I love film score, and I sort of miss those days of, big, amazing scores. I feel, scores today are just trying to play for the scene as opposed to thematically as a whole. So when a score comes around that, I haven't seen Madonna's film that premiered, I think, yesterday, but the composer, Abel Korzeniowski, he did the film A Single Man, and it's probably one of my favorite scores in the past 5 years. I'm digressing too, but I think it's taste. I think it's where music is right now. I think the way movies are made now, you know.
I choose films that or music that I like, so I don't really care what anybody else thinks. To a point where it's do I try to hit do I try to put like Justin Bieber music in there or whatever his name is no. I mean,
Hey, it's Justin Bieber.
Yeah, see, that's exactly
really awesome.
That's where I'm at with the tastes of the kids these days. So yeah, I don't think you can answer. I think as a director, you got to just sort of go with your own taste. That's it, and you can't really trust anybody else's taste, or outside of your music supervisor. You know, that's sort of your right-hand man or woman in that thing.
There's something I cringe at every time I hear, and that's you alluded to it earlier, the sound alike. You know, so you have a film and you desperately want Patti Smith, you desperately want Coldplay or whatever it is, and you know that's out of your price range. Maybe even go and negotiate with the rights holders, and it doesn't go that well. So you then commission someone to record the sounds 90% the same version. I think it happens more maybe in television commercials than it does in film. But how do you guys approach that when, for instance, maybe you have a production company that says, we couldn't get the song. Can you arrange for something that sounds almost exactly the same?
I mean, we do that. We do that a lot. I mean, it's just what happens. I try not to put in like super expensive music and rough cuts, but even the stuff that I don't think is going to be super expensive, we cannot afford. So we try to do creative things like with More Than a Feeling with Boston, that on Fubar 2, which is very central to the plot. We pre-cleared that, but then when we re-recorded it, we got Justin Hawkins from The Darkness to sing the actual lyrics of it, so that it could have some sort of hook, And then we got Paul and his musicians to do it almost like note for note, the exact sound alike. So I think if you can find some angle to do it. The other thing I want to say is that there is so much good music out there. Like on Goon, I just got out of literally trying to replace all this music, and back in June I was like, "There's no way I can do this. I mean, this is crazy." Because we had like Metallica tracks pumping in over the PA system for the hockey games, and you just work at it, and you just have to not be so snobby about the music and just be open to trying things. And if you slip it into the cut, it'll work. Like we replaced Metallica with Death Angel. And it's better. It's better than Metallica because it just sort of works. Like we had, even with, I can't remember the names of them. Anyways, we had like 3 different levels for the Quebec game. We had Sepultura right off the top. We're like, oh, we'll get a Sepultura track. No, we won't. That's 20 grand. There seems to be, at certain labels, it's like 20 grand all in. And you're like, well, we can't do 20 grand all in. So then we go to, God, I can't even remember, another band that we thought would be 5,000 all in. Nope, that's 8,500. And you're just horse trading at this point. So then I went to my composer who owns a couple labels, and he was like, try this. It's Quebecois heavy metal, $1,000 all in. And it's better than everything else because it works. I don't know. It's just.
Well, I think that there's 2 types of music in film. There's music that's serving the film, which is what you're after.
Yeah.
And then there are, to your point, there are films that are thought up in Hollywood boardrooms as a means to sell McDonald's cups, where the music may be, will fit a film around a mixtape that we've already created. And that changes people's perspective on things.
One thing I was going to say, though, about the I want something to sound like it, that's a very, just as, filmmakers, just to be wary of and careful of, because, recently a lot of commercial houses have been nailed with, like, sending out emails, oh, we want this to sound like Sigur Rós or something like that. And if you actually, get nailed on that, copyright infringement thing, and the email sort of tracks back to that, that's really the smoking gun. So we prefer clients never to say that we want like it to sound like a specific song, and that's really what the tool, the Jingle Player does, because it's just a relational search where you can just type in Foo Fighters or whatever. You can type in the word iPod commercial, and it'll give you music that sounds just like that, and it sort of is the workaround for that, smoking gun conversation of make it sound like Coldplay clocks, because that's 9 times out of 10 what people want.
So you're saying never email your music supervisor? So that's what you're saying?
Well,
you're like Goldman
never.
Sachs.
I guess.
You're like,
I guess never specifically say rip that track off.
There's a question in the back here.
Hey, my name's Daniel. I'm from Toronto. I've been to all the panels, so I just want to say this panel by far to me, as informative as all the other ones have been, this is like you guys are just so laid back and cool. And it's so
We work in
refreshing.
music, that's why.
We're all hungover.
No, it's just so refreshing because I've been on the end as a filmmaker where I've waited 6-7 months to license like a Dead Man's Bones track, and I'm always thinking, what the heck are like these people doing on the other line, and like what takes so long, and you know, it's just good to see, you know, everybody seems so down to earth. And
Did you get the track?
we got festival rights for it, and it's worked out well.
How much did you pay?
We paid, it was my thesis film, so we paid $500. But
Okay,
my
okay.
question was for you, actually. I wanted to know what attracts you to a film. And this is my first time getting to know a bit about you, so I don't know if like The Fighter is your lowest budgeted film that you've done or not. And my other question was, how would you go about, generally speaking, looking for a music supervisor? Because I've come across 2 professional stud ones, yourself included, and they're both at film festivals. So how exactly do you go about finding one, you know?
Okay, first question, lowest budget movie I've ever worked on. Well, I have a film that's in the festival right now, Tenure, which is like a $2 million movie, which, again, like I love, for me it's, I'm like hustling to get jobs, so it's sort of approached, and if I want to do the job, and if they pay me a little bit of money to do it, I'll usually do it. But yeah, I think I'm not picky and choosy, I'll do anything really. I work at a company, there's 3 of us, and we basically all 3 work freelance, and we each get hired on jobs, and then we bring it into the company, and then the other 2 of us share it. As a music supervisor, one of the biggest things that help make us money is doing clearances. And I think, at the end of the day, there may be a filmmaker who can't afford a music supervisor or doesn't want one or all that kind of stuff, but you always need someone to clear your music. So it's the one thing that, as a supervisor, if you know how to clear songs, I think you'll always, stay in business. So that's part of my business model. But
I was just going to say, I found great success, not like the guy I used on Goon. He's actually a show promoter, and he just knows everybody. And he was recommended. I had gone through a couple people that were like, "Oh yeah, I'll do it," and then I'm like, "Well, send me music," and 3 weeks would go by, and I'd be like, "They can't do it." I just sort of churned through that, and then Jay, I think, recommended his friend, this guy Evan Dubinsky in Montreal, who basically runs shows and knows all the bands. And he's awesome because he's a hustler, and he just has everybody on speed dial and can literally call everybody right away. So, obviously, if you can't afford a music supervisor or somebody that has a ton of experience, there's also people that are on the periphery of that sort of world that can jump in and do the job too. I mean, it's not alchemy. Do you know what I mean? It just takes hustle and a lot of work and taste.
And connections. Yeah.
And taste.
Yeah, and taste, yeah.
So maybe it is alchemy.
I think that's a good point. I mean, kind of sort of finding people that do work in music that maybe, I guess, it just all depends. I think the biggest thing is just being able to get the stuff, have good taste and get it cleared, and doing the business properly, because, a lot of people forget that it's business, and there's a lot of legality that can happen if you don't clear music, so.
Another question up front here.
Hi, my name's Allegra, and I work for the Canadian Music Centre in Toronto. My question is just about finding music that's maybe not what you would say is popular music. Like when you have a request as a music supervisor to find something that's maybe a little off the beaten track. Because it
That's
sounds
always
like
what I want to do.
well, it sounds like you guys are
it's
approached a lot by people to say, here's my music, license it. And then there is the other side of like you searching for specific tracks. But what about maybe go to places that you guys search for music that you don't already know about, that's not, pop or...
I mean, as a supervisor, I'm on a list from Kieran, of here's our new bands, here's the new records that are coming out. So I'm getting music sent to me from publishers, from labels, from managers. But, I search blogs. I'm a big music fan. I go to shows all the time. Like, I'm always on the hunt for stuff, and it's usually, my taste, and then I'm trying to get my taste in whatever I'm working on. But it depends, the films call, your film's an 80s film, so you need music from the era. Take Me Home Tonight was an 80s film. He needed stuff from the era. It depends. At the end of the day, I think a supervisor is like a filter system. We're helping you, whatever the director's vision is, we're trying to help achieve that, So the director may not have, their taste may not be exactly what my taste is or my indie taste, whatever, It's just sort of like finding what the film calls for and bringing it to that. I think it's different. TV's a whole other spectrum. I'm like just now starting to do TV, and it's quicker. The music, you can use stuff that's just come out, and it's exciting. So that way, and it's kind of the opportunity to use something that's super indie, But
the blogs are great because you can find a lot of people. Like, there's a great one called "I Listen to Everything" that
I know that girl actually.
always
Diane.
updating and always just. It might not get you the song, but it might put you in the right thing. And I can never underestimate the power of iTunes Genius in terms of just giving you tangents and different things. Because many times when I'm looking for music, I don't know exactly what I'm looking for, and it's just a matter of exploring different things. And YouTube's a great thing too.
The only scary thing is I was like, on blogs now there's like remixes or crazy mashups or whatever. And the scary thing as a supervisor is a director or an editor pulling that from a blog and putting it in their movie, and they love it. They fall in love with it. And then I'm in a situation like that with a film right now where we found some some 8-track remix of some Drake song or something.
You have no idea where it's come from.
No clue. And I call the publisher, I call the label. They're like, this is unregistered. This was never negotiated. I've been trying to clear music from the Kanye Jay-Z record that just came out. It's such a good record. It's not negotiated. I can't clear anything off of it. Even the Kanye record that came out last year.
Because of the samples.
All the samples, nothing's negotiated. So we can't even use it if we want to.
We met with, a while ago, our company, because we were trying to figure out a way to exploit the Bad Boy catalog. And they were just saying it's literally impossible because there's 100 co-writers on tracks as well as samples that were never cleared.
It's like De La Soul, the other stuff. Same thing. It's like it's such a bummer.
As an artist, always figure out those writer splits first, and always have your paperwork tight, because when an opportunity comes along, if you guys end up arguing over who wrote what, that pretty much can slow down and or kibosh the deal, because there's nothing that scares off music supervisors more than question marks next to percentages on songs.
Isn't hip hop the word that scares off a music supervisor more than anything else?
I mean, I always hip hop is just so hard, to clear. But it's like you become like a detective.
I have a friend, Scott Benner, who does a lot of stuff.
Yes,
I think
we work with Scott on Entourage.
But he's someone that he's just does that really, really well. And a lot of times, like you said, he gets things from blogs. And
he gets things from blogs, and then someone like me has to do the clearances on it.
And then someone like me gets to swap out the tune that he couldn't clear. So we all get
full circle.
Michael, have you put music up to a picture before and found that it overshadows what the scene is because maybe the music is too iconic and has its own identity already?
Not really. I mean, it's normally we deal with that in the offline stage, but it's I find now with technology, just to totally change subjects, it's we have to read the riot acts to our assistant editors because of those problems. Because we're pulling crap from everything, from YouTube and just trying everything. And I'm not so hard on the sound quality. If I find a track that works really well, that has some emotional content, that's maybe recorded in a barn in 1972, that somehow has made its way off of VHS to YouTube, I'll use it because I know my mixer can add a little magic and it'll make it work well. But what you forget is that the assistant editor doesn't track it properly or something like that, and then you end up literally with just the name of the song in your EDL, and you have no idea what else it is. Always have to watch that. What was your question? It was about. I'm hungover.
Questions in the audience? Anybody else?
You know what? I wouldn't mind that we have. Season and Jared have both taken an iconic scene. This being from Say Anything with John Cusack, and the very famous Ghetto Blaster scene, which with Peter Gabriel, you can't really separate that song from that scene. But as an exercise, we've tried today, and we thought it might be just kind of a hoot if we tried a couple different versions, and then maybe hear from our panelists and from you guys out there as to which one you thought works better.
You guys really made it hard on yourself, didn't you?
And
You
maybe
let's
Just so
pick
you
the
guys
most
know,
iconic scene with music in it.
I feel like we could have put 100
Jared
songs
suggested
to this
Jaws
scene.
at first, which maybe would have been like the only more iconic scene. But Season, are we starting with you? So
Just so you guys know, I think I sent Jared like 10 songs. So I don't even remember which one you picked, actually.
Basically, we
We tried to play it. Go ahead. Oh, right, okay.
So we're going to show two back to back and just show you how the context of the scene is slightly
Jared's more funny
changed
than
with new music to it. Enjoy.
just before we play it.
Absolutely not.
When we started this exercise, I think Season made a good point because she said this isn't really realistic. You know, we don't approach a scene and just throw a song up in isolation. You know, never mind budget constraints. You know, the song should thematically fit maybe with the rest of the film, with the rest of the music. It should tell a bigger story than just fit against 90 seconds of picture. But for the purposes of this exercise, I think it's going to be all right.
It'll just be funny. I know, great choice, right, guys?
We may want to rewind that one. Talk amongst yourselves. Still romantic.
It always starts really well and then falls apart.
Exactly.
Like 40 minutes in, you're like, no.
So that still, I guess, is in the romantic
Okay,
category.
somebody own up to that. Well, whose choice was that?
That was
That was fine. That was
My-
one of my 10. We were just talking about how we feel Lionel Richie's going to have a resurgence.
mine's a little bit more demented, so don't judge me, guys.
I had a demented one, but he didn't. I'll tell you guys what else I had after this. Okay.
Roll it. Not quite as romantic.
In this case, Jared was under strict instructions to keep his like MPAA rating.
This is a kid's affair.
I also had a Rape Me Nirvana. It actually worked pretty well.
Obviously, that's that's a bit of a counterpoint there to show, but the Lionel Richie song is not that far
Yeah, that's
off
what we were trying to show, like
thematically,
a-
from the Peter Gabriel song.
It just goes to show that like just choices that one made in the edit room, how like impactful that scene is
How
years and years later, and how just that's very encouraging, I guess, to any artist who would be offered a chance to be in a film in an iconic moment. You never know how these things really play out. Some things get swept under the rug, and other musical moments, like in Quentin Tarantino films, or just anyone who really John Waters films, these moments live on forever.
Yeah, I guess to the extent that a scene can be made by the choice of music, there are plenty of examples of songs that have become famous because of the scenes they're used in.
Just as an aside, I wanted to say that my understanding is the camera crew originally wanted Billy Idol's "To Be a Lover" to go over that scene, and that was actually something that came around in the editing process.
Yeah.
That's a great track. Yeah.
Back here.
Sorry, forgive me. I'm a big Gabriel fan. I can't remember for the life of me what the song you're referring to is, because. Right, fantastic. Right, great.
Any other questions?
This is probably very unorthodox, but what's your advice on free downloads of music that you can tamper with? We got all these tons of stuff they offer. You're a very low budget. Is it only for scratch, rough cut stuff, or can you get by with it on a bigger? Say, and this is in the case of documentaries that I'm working on.
I mean, you can't just use it, and you have to clear it, if that's your question. But I find what's weird, what we always inevitably do is we go on massive searches for CDs. Like, we spend all the time downloading, and then inevitably we get to the mix, and we're like, oh, right, we need CD quality, right? We can't mix with MP3, so we end up just, like, literally running around town, like, looking for this craziest CDs. Because it's so downloadable now. Everything just gets wired to you, and you never even touch a CD until the mixer reads you the riot act.
The label will send to you.
The label will send it to you, but inevitably we're not that organized. We're like,
when you're in an editing bay at midnight.
Go to Phonopolis and see if they have this.
How often do you ask for just splits as well, like stems of the tracks, or more labels?
Well,
getting smart
I've
with
had
that?
some really cool experiences, like on the studio film I did, which we inadvertently worked together on, but have never met. We had this Pete Townsend track, and we were able to get the original stems of this Pete Townsend track. And I was working with Trevor Horn as the composer, and sort of rework these stems throughout the film. And even with Trevor, we were able to get his original stems for Video Killed the Radio Star and rebuild that song throughout the opening of the film. That never made the light of day due to
Unfortunately, the production company changed it, but yeah.
But
That wasn't me.
but yeah, every once in a while we get to go back to those re-records and those or the original things, and it's always a mixer's wet dream. It's amazing.
Yeah, from our perspective, we now ask every artist to deliver us at the minimum instrumentals, so that if there's a scene where dialogue needs to kind of take over from the song, rather than dropping the entire volume of the song, you can kind of just pull back the vocals and let the song breathe a bit, and then kind of bring them back as you need.
Yeah.
Trailers, ads, all that stuff. We always need instrumentals.
And the composer always delivers on stems. Don't let them deliver stereo tracks.
In our interface, there's literally, when you listen to the track, you can hit the version button, and it'll spit out for you, like if it's a full pop song, instrumental, and then if it's like composed stuff that we make, it'll spit out like 7 different versions of it. So just drum and bass, guitar, piano line, and then the editor can really rebuild it up from scratch and feel like they're part of the process, because editors and I guess directors, all the creative people that are in the edit bay, really like to feel like they're part of that creative build-up, and instead of just laying the track straight in there, that being able to weave the dialogue in and out in a clever way and dip levels is always very, very helpful.
We've got time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions here in the yellow.
Yeah, I have a question in regards to licensing music that is pretty iconic, or the artists are iconic. Accessing possibly unreleased tracks, like early analog music. Is that easier, more accessible?
Sorry, what was the end of the question? Sorry.
Well, I'm working on I have a development money, and I'm working on a documentary from a photographer's perspective. Who shot a lot of classic, iconic rock stars from 1965 to 1975. And we have some musicians in the film or who've signed on to be interviewed. And I keep talking to people about music. And I would like to incorporate analog, like really capture the essence of analog in the film. So I've been talking to people about unreleased tracks, like analog music, early recordings that are stored in the treasure trove of EMI, Capitol Records, LA.
Are you having trouble getting it, or are you just curious, like, how to get it, I guess?
I'm exploring it, how to get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would just, again, it would be just contacting and asking, you know, is there any, or maybe it's, you know, if it's, especially if it's your photographer's worked with specific bands, you know, you could just go to the manager and say, look, here's what we're doing, here's the film, you know, here's what we'd like to use in the film. You know, does the band have anything, would they be open to it? You know, and see what they'd provide. You know, you never know.
Yeah, this sounds like an example where you need to get to the artist.
Yeah.
Because if you're saying that if you don't know if it exists, the person who's going to know is going to be the artist or the manager, not necessarily the person in charge of clearing the same song that they always get asked for.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah, but you still would have to go clear it, you know. But I would say whatever, especially art. I mean, the label owns it regardless,
Well,
even if it is some unreleased thing. So
there's about to be a copyright reversion thing for records that have been around for more than 35 years, and certain artists are opting into it. Like Bruce Springsteen, I believe, is going to own the master on "Darkness on the Edge of Town."
Well, it's every in 2012 or 13, every record that came out in 1978.
There's a loophole.
Yeah, it's sort of like out of copyright, so it reverts. The labels are kind of fighting against it right now too, because basically the artist is saying, you know, I was a work for hire, and the label's saying, no, you know, we own everything you have, you are an employee. So the artists are trying to fight, and so any records that came out in 1978, the masters are reverting back to the artist.
But regardless,
if they file,
somebody still owns the copyright.
Just in 1978?
Well, it's
every year it'll be a new year.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah.
So it's that 35-year basic like lease on the master.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I would say go to the manager first and see what exists. I think talk to the band first. I mean, again, I bring up the Stones again just because Peter Afterman, who's a music supervisor, he is running like the Stones catalog now, and he's so cool and he's so open to doing stuff, and so is the band, and you know, it's just cool. There's so many bands now that just like have their own stuff, you know.
From which album forward, that is?
Yeah, I'm still trying to think. I will let you know. I will let you know. But it's and I think Peter represents like James Brown too. I don't know. It's amazing the things that's accessible. You know.
Well, I wanted to wrap things up. We're out of time, but thank you to Michael, Season, Jared, and Jason for joining us, and to everyone here for taking the time to come and have this discussion with us. Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming.